1984. That was a team that was carried by Ronnie Lott and that defense. And I don't even have to go that far back, but I will just because of the 49ers. But I'll take you to a more recent matchup that occurred too. The Seattle Seahawks and the Denver Broncos in 2013. And you have the Broncos, that record-setting offense with Peyton Manning. They're coming off of a great fiscal season offensively, and the defense wasn't bad either. It wasn't what it was in 2015, but it wasn't a bad defense either. And I was one of the people who's going to get, I think Peyton's going to get this one. And Seattle's defense completely went in there and shut them down. I believe that San Francisco is going to neutralize Kansas City. I don't believe they're going to shut them down, but I believe they're going to neutralize them. First off, I haven't seen a defense, especially a defensive front seven like this. I have to go back to the Pittsburgh Steelers of the Bill Cowher, early Mike Tomlin days, when you had James Ferrier and Larry Foote and James Harrison and Brett Kiesel and all those guys who were up front there on that defense. And you had great playmakers in the secondary as well. And the 49ers, they have a great leader in that secondary in Richard Sherman. And, he's doing a great job with that team. Scott, I'm going to ask you this now. Do you believe that he's better now as a 49er than he was as a Seahawk?
I think he's smarter, knows how to get in people's heads. I don't think he's as good as he was with the Seahawks, but what he brings to that locker room with experience tends to bring on some incredible instant credibility. He knows how to get in anytime you can walk in your clubhouse and say, been there, done that, this is what we got to do. That don't count out the significance of that. It means a lot. So I think Sherman has been a good investment for the 49ers, and I think Seattle probably may, at this point in time, knowing that San Francisco's in there, may have wished they held on to him. But Seattle's still a pretty good team.
And they probably do. And it's funny, Scott, because when Richard Sherman signed that contract with San Francisco, which you heard throughout a great deal of the media, this is a bad deal. This is a bad contract. No, this isn't going to work. And he just defeated all the odds coming back from that Achilles injury and playing as great as he's ever played. But I'm with you there. I believe he's a smarter player. I believe he's more technical. I believe he's more calculating than he was with Seattle. I do believe that. But, let me go back to my historical reference really quickly. What happened to the Seattle Seahawks, what happened to the Denver Broncos in that Super Bowl against the Seahawks, that's not going to happen to Kansas City, but they're not going to come out there and do to them what they did to the Titans and what they did to the Texans too. I don't care how great Patrick Mahomes is. And I don't believe he'll be Dan Marino. I don't believe he's going to be a guy who's going to play a great career and does not win a Super Bowl. I don't believe that's going to be Patrick Mahomes by a long shot. But I do believe he's going to have to wait a little while longer because I still believe in the old cliche, defense wins championships. And I haven't seen an offense yet be able to overcome what San Francisco's defense brings to the table. You talk about Jimmy Garoppolo getting injured last season and how much that really was a blessing in disguise because the team, they fell apart basically, and that allowed them to fall into the number 2 slot. And because Arizona was so much in love with Kyler Murray, they were able to select Nick Bosa, and that really changed everything. And they already had great players there as well. Then they signed Quan Alexander in the offseason. They traded for Dee Ford. I don't see this. I don't see this going in Kansas City's way at all. I believe that defensive front of the 49ers is going to be too much for Kansas City's offensive line to handle. I believe Patrick Mahomes is going to be under more pressure than he's been in this entire postseason. And I simply believe that Kyle Shanahan is going to outcoach Andy Reid.
Well, first of all, I was actually hoping for a Kansas City-Green Bay game, and I guess my birth certificate is good reason for it. I was looking to see history repeat itself here in 2020. Never happened, but still hoping for it. Certainly would have been a lot of great storylines and a lot of old footage. I do believe that the biggest variable in this game is how effective San Francisco's running attack is that relegates Jimmy Garoppolo to be a game manager, because that's what beat the Packers in the NFC Championship game. And that's a great running back will keep a great running game will keep the Kansas City Chiefs on the sidelines and not on the field. Which explains why I agree that I think the 49ers will win. Will probably be a 21-17 type of game.
Yeah, more than anything, I'm hoping for a great game here. But it's funny that you bring up the Packers and Chiefs scenario, because I was thinking about this a few days ago. The NFL is celebrating its 100th season. Now, the Super Bowl is not 100 years old. This is its 54th anniversary. But the NFL itself is 100 years old this year. Now, I bring up the Super Bowl, just how this could have been a full circle moment for the league, because, Scott, I already know the answer to this. But tell our viewers who the two teams were who played in Super Bowl one.
Well, the Packers and the Chiefs.
Okay, exactly. And, I'm just sitting there thinking about that moment. I'm just like, wow, that really would have been so epic. That really would have been so cool to see that in the NFL 100th season, which they have marketed to its capacity at this point. NFL 100 has been everything this year. And if that could have came together to be that full circle of a moment, and possibly what I believe would have been a passing of the torch from Aaron Rodgers to Patrick Mahomes, that would have been a great story there. But nonetheless, I still believe we're going to get a great game here. I'm leaning towards the way that you are. I'm going to actually say 2017 San Francisco. I don't believe this is going to be a high-scoring game at all, despite what Kansas City's offense can do, despite what we saw, what San Francisco's running game can do. I don't believe they're going to get in the 30s in this game.
Well, think about this, Xavier. And you talk about the NFL 100, they didn't have the Super Bowl champion on opening night. They had the Packers and the Bears. Think about that. So they were able to decide what they wanted for an opener. They just fell a little short for the finale. Well, boy, that would have been incredible storylines. We have always a lot of good storylines at this time. So I'm with you on a lot of things. I think the 49ers. Now, I'll tell you one thing about the 49ers, though. You better give John Lynch a lot of credit for some of the moves he's made. Even though they had a bad year, it's one thing to be able to have that second pick overall, but you better cash in that chip, and he did it in a big way. And the one thing I should point out about Terrell Suggs, you mentioned him before, he wanted to go to the Baltimore Ravens, but he got talked into going to the Chiefs, and how did that work out? Pretty good. Steve Spagnuolo has been a good defensive coordinator for Kansas City as well, but he won't be good enough in this game, as I agree with you, that the 49ers are going to walk away. And you have to hope that Kyle Shanahan learned his lessons from the Atlanta game against the New England Patriots as well, knowing that you need a running game in order to keep ball control and keep the ball out of a high-scoring offense.
Well, Scott, before we go off the air, that's the one thing I will say about this that I don't really care too much for. I don't really care too much to hear Kyle Shanahan come out here and say that he learned his lessons from Super Bowl 51. I'm not a diehard Falcons fan, but I am from the state of Georgia, and I did sit there in my dorm room that night and basically almost melt to the floor as the Falcons coughed up that 28-3 lead that allowed the Patriots to come back and win that Super Bowl the way that they did. So personally, I don't care to hear Kyle Shanahan say that he learned lessons from Super Bowl 51. I just don't care for that. I don't. Now, I believe that the 49ers will win the game. I believe they're going to be six-time world champions. I believe he's the best young coach in football. But as far as him saying that, no, I don't care.
Yeah,
not at all.
But don't think he's not thinking it, because he is. That's called learning from your mistakes. That's all I'm telling you. You learn from your mistakes.
I mean, and him going out and getting Tevin Coleman, that was a chess move as well.
Oh, sure.
We know why he went and did that.
Well, I mean, it's okay to learn from your mistakes as long as you cash in your chips later on. And that's what he's doing. And you know what? He's a great young coach. And comes from good family lines with Daddy old Mike Shanahan, who used to coach the 49ers. My goodness, how these things do indeed come full circle. So, meanwhile, that completes another edition of The Real and the Rare. My name is Scott Morganroth, along with
the X Factor, Xavier McKnight.
Glad to have you back, Xavier. Look forward to doing more episodes. And all I can tell you, it's been a lot of fun. You are as prepared as they can be. That's what makes you the X-Man, because you're on point. So good job, Xavier. Have a great night, and we'll look to do it again soon. Here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, The Real and the Rare. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.